Hello, this is Audrey. Welcome to day 24 of the 25 days of Copilots. With one day left, today we're going to understand Copilot scopes, skills, and mitigation layers. Something I think you can now clearly see after we get to the end of this series. Now, I will be transparent that I switched days 24 and 25 just because of the delay on today. So just cross your fingers with me that we still get that surprise presentation for tomorrow on the very last day. But today, let's double click on scope, skills, and mitigation layers. You might remember from day 1, where I gave an overview, day 1 and 2, where I gave an overview of what is Copilot. Where did this word come from, Copilot? Because we're in the era of Copilot here at Microsoft. And as we looked at that word, we learned that we're getting a brand new category of software that comes from these LLM foundation models, right? And this is truly a partnership, as you have seen, with OpenAI. Now, the Copilot, being artificial intelligence, should never be used independently of a real human. And I think that's what I highlighted on days 1 and 2. But here, I want to look closely at this slide where it talks about skills and scoping, all right? Because you're going to see a difference in which controls or methods you used because of how the Copilot may be skilled and scoped, all right? And this has a lot to do with the mitigation layers that are wrapped around the foundation model. Now, understand that we never change any model. The model stays exactly as it was. It is trained by OpenAI, and we do not have to do any use your data or anything else to train that model. That model is trained by OpenAI, and it stays up to date based on what's being released at the time as a result of our partnership. Now, but what's wrapped around that model is where we have that safety system, which kind of works both ways, sending certain parameters and details when you prompt. So your prompt is really not hitting the model all by itself. And then after that response comes back, we're filtering that response a bit to monitor it for safety and things like that, to make sure there's no infringement on compliance from the perspective of how we're using it in the cloud. And then as we get to the application level, you'll have very different things happen. Now, one thing I didn't show you at all is the Microsoft Office Copilots. So there's one for PowerPoint, there's one for Excel, and these are amazing. My apologies for not being able to demo them to you, but they're going to do things that will take that response and actually trigger code. So will the Power Platform Copilots, right? So it's not the model that's creating that final PowerPoint presentation. The response and the system information that came through with that response actually is able to trigger code and do things on an application level. So what one Copilot might be able to do may differ immensely from what another Copilot control may be able to do. And that's on the application level. And then we always have very high transparency of purpose. This is also part of responsible AI, so that you know how this Copilot is being positioned. All right. So I felt it was good to kind of point this out to you before I demo kind of how this feels. All right. So we're going to go back into ChatGPT, the one that we all met probably first, right? ChatGPT. And here I've asked a couple of questions to ChatGPT. And first question is, who is Albert Einstein? Now notice I spelled Einstein wrong, but it corrected me. You meant Albert Einstein, right? And then he gives me a little story about Albert Einstein. And that's a fairly short story. I think I should also, from here, go into Bing Chat as well. Okay, but let me continue. Okay, the second thing I said was write a poem in the style of Donald Trump. Now I'm using a real person to style the content, right? And if you look at this response, notice the second paragraph of the poem says, with tweets and speeches, a voice so loud, he conquered the crowd, gathered the crowd. Make America great, his rallying cry. In a world of deals, he reached for the sky. Now, as you continue to read this, you'll start to pick up on the influence of Donald Trump's style. Okay, kind of fun. And I don't mean to insinuate any political leaning there. I just want to show you that that kind of thing can occur. Now, as I mentioned also back on day 1 and 2, is that these responses that are generated can be biased, right? You can discover bias. And I'd love you to do some testing in ChatGPT and find the prompts that are biased, because you'll be surprised how easy that is to do. Now, here's an important factor around that. This is why in the Power Platform, we always have the human in the loop, so that we can get rid of those things. But that mitigation layer that I mentioned to you earlier may also be able to filter out those biases. Okay, so here we are in ChatGPT. Now I'm going to pop us over to AI Builder, where I have the same prompt. I write a poem about today's weather in the style of person. Now I am in Azure OpenAI. I am in that partnership with Azure and OpenAI, or with Microsoft and OpenAI. And now that mitigation layer makes a difference. Okay, but I think I still get an answer here. I'm going to go ahead and put Donald Trump here and test the prompt. And I cannot generate a poem about today's weather in the style of a specific person, including Donald Trump. However, I can create a poem about today's weather in a general style. Would you like me to do that? So notice that now that I'm in that mitigation layer, right, there's a safety system wrapped around the model. The model has not been changed, but we are filtering out responses that could lead to bias or be unsafe or maybe even touch copyrighted information, blah, blah, blah. So the same exact prompt in the cloud, or as you use Microsoft Copilot, will return this. Now, I'm going to specifically say any Copilot or any model like this one that is GPT powered, right, still understands this prompt, right? But there's some filtering that has occurred. The Copilot controls, however, are different. Okay, so I want to go over to the Power App that we played around with as we learned about AI Builder models and how to customize them, and when we learned about the different controls that are possible. All right, so all of these generate text things, and if you didn't see this, it's worth watching on day 11. Right? Then we learned how to customize, and I went ahead and added a weather poem from AI Builder, and so I can put here Donald Trump, right? And run that weather poem, and you'll get that same answer, right? Because that layer of mitigation is kicking in, right? I should still be able to do who is, though. Right? Let's try who is. So let's put Donald Trump here. I think I did. What happened? I might not have tied this up. So let's go back to AI Builder and look at this prompt, who is, because I might not have just finished the expression. And then I'm going to put Donald Trump here. So this is just a who is prompt, right? And I'm getting a very bogus kind of response here. Right? So again, I think that's the mitigation level kicking in, layer kicking in. Now, I want to look at the controls here. So I believe yesterday I showed you, or the day before, I reviewed the controls that you can put into a Power App. So for instance, the maker control. I mean, not the maker control, the app control. And you can always tell what control it is because it is very transparent about its purpose. It says, do you have a question about this app? Now, as you remember, let's go look at this up close. This control is tied to data, the data that I've selected to associate it with. So its primary purpose is to talk about that data. All right. So think of that as a skill, right? So how many accounts have annual revenue over 10,000? We'll just, I don't remember what the data is, so we'll find out. And this question, it has no problem answering. Okay. And this is happening on the application layer, right? Just like when you use Copilot to build an app, okay, that's also a Copilot control that has skills and scope to the application level. When the prompt is returned from the response, it triggers code that can build the app, right? Just like that PowerPoint Copilot could trigger code to build a deck, right? So it does very well with that. But if I say, who is Albert Einstein here? I'll try and spell it right this time. This one it cannot answer. Okay, it does not have the same GPT power that, say, our AI builder models have. Okay, so it does not, I would say, I would be confident in saying, don't expect it to give you any answers from the internet, right? It is completely focused on the data, right? So it is scoped to this data. And trying to think of another example of this. Basically, it's the same thing with the PowerPoint Copilots, right? The Excel Copilot. What these controls do that are scoped to the application level completely is they leverage Microsoft Graph. And when Microsoft Graph is engaged, you don't have access to that internet data, right? So you have a difference. Now, where you're going to see the biggest difference is yesterday or the day before, we talked about using chatbots or Copilot Studio copilots. And these can actually take on several different personas, right? So you can extend the Microsoft 365 Copilots, which was not demoed to you just because of our demonstration environments don't have access. But you can actually extend your Copilot, say, in Teams, right? So it has the ability to extend the capabilities of those MS Graph-based Copilots. It also has the ability to do generative responses in the normal way of the AI Builder prompts, right? And so in this case, I have this particular bot set up. It's associated with 3 different chess sites. And so it'll start looking for answers from those sites that I've configured it to have. But it also has access. It is GPT powered because generative responses is turned on, toggled on. I can say here, who is Albert Einstein? And I get back an answer. Okay. Now, it doesn't have a topic, or it doesn't understand how does Albert Einstein relate to chess pieces chess boards and pieces and supplies that you're selling. So it may get confused on what should it do after it gives that answer, but it most definitely can give that answer. It has access to those GPT commands, right? However, right, let's do the poem thing. write a poem about the news in the style of Donald Trump. Again, I'm not suggesting any political leaning. This is just really easy to understand. Okay, can't help with that because those mitigation layers are handling that environment. So it's you have to keep in mind that these skills, the scoping and the mitigation layers will get involved in what responses you will get back. Okay, and in many cases, these are safety protections or they're application scoping that really focuses on getting the task at hand done, right? Nobody needs to use Donald Trump in this work environment, so it's not involved in the task at hand. And so, therefore, you're going to feel this variance. But I do want to say, automatically assume that any Copilot control is going to be covered by this mitigation layer, which is a protection as well. Protection as well as a constraint, which means you also have access to Microsoft Graph. However, when you configure your own prompts and you're leveraging the GPT Foundation model with your own dynamic prompts, then you're going to have that GPT power, which has access to all the data that was leveraged to train the model. And however, you're going to get more answers from, say, a public model than you will from the cloud model because the protective layers are not the same. Now, I would never suggest that there are no protective layers in the public, but there are definitely less than what you'll see in the cloud. So take a moment to look at these differences. I'm just going to go to Bing Chat as well. I want to just kind of point out something about Albert Einstein there. I'm just going to, I think I lost my click, so let me just click into Bing Chat. And here I'm in a protected environment. Okay, now this is the enterprise version of Azure OpenAI, right? So who is Albert Einstein? Now you would expect this to be basically the same as ChatGPT, but it actually very often is going to give you more, right? And I noticed this it depends on what type of, what kind of response is coming back. But like, for instance, you see this wikipedia.org. In Copilot, we can actually block certain sources from responses, like where you can use a little snippet of code to say, don't include Wikipedia, right? And so notice here with the enterprise version, I've got a picture of Albert Einstein. I've got all of the books about him, right? And I've got supplementary questions. So here I'm protected, but I'm also going to get a lot of relevance suggestions, relevance in the enterprise level as far as that goes. Can I write a poem? I want you to guess before I finish. Can I write a poem about the news in the style of Donald Trump? See if you can answer the question out loud before I finish, before I hit enter. Do you think so? Okay. Notice it's searching in the area of news. And notice it does come back with a poem, right? So one thing that you don't have here is the Microsoft Graph, okay? And so as you learn about these different approaches, I'm going to say, you will start to see as you work in the cloud, right? As you work in the cloud, you will see that you will favor the Copilot controls for anything work related because it's going to facilitate the task at hand. And having Microsoft Graph handy is way more important than having like general internet available. Now, here's what I will say though. when you're thinking that you need that more broad information that's outside of the scope of your application. So, for instance, if I was doing an app about cars and maybe I had a database in Dataverse, some tables about cars, right? Those cars would have specific make and models in the data, but it wouldn't have any detail about whether those cars have 4 doors, 3 doors, 2 doors. If I want to use AI Builder or I want to use Copilot Studio, I can leverage a chatbot in my app to tell you how many of the cars you selected, which ones have 4 doors versus 2, because it can reach out to that source of the internet and find and look and see whether that car make and model has 2 doors or 4. Okay, but if it is a Copilot control that is scoped within the application, it will only be able to look at the data you have. So you have to kind of think about in which case you want to do what. And I'm going to say I'm very excited about Copilot Studio because you can bring these different factors together in a safe way, even deciding how you want to restrict them. Like I was saying, if you don't want responses with Wikipedia as a result. And you can even create these kind of mashup scenarios. And the only things I will say that I really still come straight here to Copilot for Edge or Bing Chat for Enterprise is when I want photography, because that is coming out here easily. So it's something you may be able to look forward to in the Microsoft Copilots. I cannot guarantee that. You may be able to look forward to some of the other OpenAI functions, such as creating images, creating music, creating voice. But right now, this is the best place to get all of those different foundation models together. So I'm going to kind of leave you with that thought. And my whole kind of goal today is really for you to understand basically why is there a variance in the responses? What is the purpose of those Copilot controls and the power of the Microsoft Graph behind them? And when you might want a little bit more, where you'll head to maybe a custom prompt in AI Builder, understanding that there is some filters and monitoring happening there, right? Or when you want to go to Copilot and kind of Copilot Studio and actually create something that may have multiple approaches involved in the solution. So think about this, but also I'm going to leave you with this thought. Can you imagine in your head a day when this variance is less pronounced and more seamless? I can see that in the future. Can you see that? What do you imagine when you think of Copilots? What do you imagine the future being like? What are you concerned about? We'd really love you to put those thoughts on the community page. So aka.ms/25 days of Copilots is an aggregation of everything. And that page gives you an opportunity not just to tell us what you thought of the series, but I'd love to see you tell us what you see in the future of Copilots. How is AI going to be working side by side with us in 5 years, in 10 years? I'd love your ideas. Go ahead, pull out your crystal ball and predict the future. In any event, I believe it's a fabulous vision of where we're going. And I'm standing by right next to you, waiting to see how this grows. So I'm going to stop here for day 24, which I said was actually going to be day 25. And we're going to have one more, hopefully tomorrow. And if not, I'll just be here to say happy holidays. And that will be a pro dev topic. So I'll be talking to you soon. I wish you the happiest holidays. And I'll see you tomorrow at day 25 of the 25 days of Copilots. Woo, time just flew.